Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Queen Who Refused. Synopsis. I, Victor Salazar, Alpha of the Crimson Pack, reject you, Queen of Astoria. He grins at her. And I, Isabel Hayes, reject your rejection, King of Narcissism. Victor Salazar, the most merciless and courageous Alpha of the Crimson Pack, turns down Isabel Hayes when she is just 15 years old. His mate, who has endured a challenging history and was nearly at the point of death, was saved by her brother-in-law, who took her away from her pack. Isabel was just managing to cope with her demons when Victor arrived and rejected her immediately without providing any explanation or letting her know that he was her mate. What truly pains her the most is when he draws comparisons between her and his former mate, like how everyone in her past has treated her. After 5 years, they encounter each other again. Will Victor still go through rejecting her, leading to Isabel rejecting his rejection, or will it turn out differently? Episode 1. Friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." C.S. Lewis. It was the first meeting of the Crescent and the Crimson Pack after years of going to war with each other. Two pack were enemies, both were fear and both now run by two young alphas who have come to an agreement to put aside their differences and settle on good terms. Both alphas developed friendship at school behind their packs and eventually, they became best friends. When their time comes to take over their pack, both alpha decided that it was time to build bridges instead of walls between their neighbors. The Crescent was the host for their meeting and the Crimson Pack, run by the demigod in looks, demigod in bed, and demigod in wolves' war according to the Lady's Book, was none other than Victor Salazar. He was the talk of the werewolves' world, like one of those celebrities in movies. The only alpha who has no mate, who usurped the rules of the council where all alpha must have a Luna when they surpass their age of 20. He also set his own rules without seeking help from them. Victor didn't care about a Luna or girlfriend, one was enough, and having another one was a bad idea cause to him they were nothing but just a bond. Mates mean nothing but only a distraction. His best friend Alan, Alpha of the Crescent, was the total opposite of him. Their first encounter was when both boys were thrown in detention due to a feud over a girl. Where their senior's jock, son of another alpha, mistook Alan for Victor when he looks for the junior who has banged his cheery girlfriend. They were bullying him near the bleachers when the jock realized they got the wrong guy, as his girl was straddling a guy behind the far corner, which was none other than Victor. The fight got dirty with the jock and his minions ending up in the hospital. From there on, Alan always tries to stick with Victor, who had not only to save him from that one event but from other bullies. Alan still makes friends with him even though Victor was hard to be friends with. In the end, both boys were best of friends after college. Victor walks down to the staircase of his pack house. The house was occupied by the Alpha, his younger sister Cora, his Beta Gem and his Gamma Lawrence. All members live in their own houses, nobody lives in the pack house, and if they come, it either on special occasions or functions for the whole pack. Their only guest who visits frequently and one person who was like their pack consultant was Gem's older brother Kyle, who hasn't found a mate but has a girlfriend, namely Clara. Since it was their first time signing a treaty, everyone was outside the house wishing their alpha all good lucks except for Kyle, who went on a vacation with Clara. When they bid him good wishes, he got into his car with his undercover secret warriors along with his Beta Gem and Gamma Lawrence. They all set off to their neighboring pack, the Crescent. The distance wasn't far, so they arrived there on time, greeted by none other than his best friend. Alan gave out his right hand, which he shook in return, and they all went inside to discuss and settle their agreement. Later on, it was dinner time. Surprisingly, everyone seems to get along. The dinner was served. He kept nodding his head to Alan as they both lost in their conversation. He was to ask Alan about his Luna when he smells that scent again. He forgot the years they saw each other, the year he last smells that scent. He pretended to listen to Alan while his eyes darted behind him to all the girls who came to serve the food. He falls back to his chair smiling at Alan, and once he looks to his left he saw her placing the food on the table in front of Jem, then to Lawrence. He growls a little when he saw the boys eyeing her direction. She smiles back at them, then she glances in his direction as if she just smells his scent too. Her eyes found his, then took the plate from in front of Jem and walk off with no second glance at him while his wolf hollow in his head, mate. I'll pretend that I've never settled my eyes on you or even have met you before. Let's be strangers for now in their eyes. Victor, have you ever thought of finding a mate? Alan asks him as he lay down his spoon. He raises his hand for the waiter for water and he saw her coming right up with it. She put it in front of him. He smiles again. She ignores him. One was enough as the other one has eloped with another werewolf. He lies to Alan, taking a gulp and glances aside, finding her to halt in her step, then she walks again. Interesting, I thought you never found her, but hey, who cares? He raises his glass which they both clink together and drinks to it. Okay, you see that girl? He lowers his voice, shutting out everyone from their mind links and put up a barrier to their table. Victor's eyes follow Alan and found his mate smiling next to a male waiter, who was closer to her, whispering something in her ear. Then she laughs again. He gritted his teeth. What about her, Alan? He looks aside to find his friend smiling. I'm thinking of making her my Luna. He felt his wolf growling within him, yet he pushed him at the back of his head. She's not your mate or your pack member. Victor knew his mate was not from either his or Alan's pack. He remembers that she lives in a neutral territory run by the council. All matters there are handled by the council, run by 4 high-ranking alpha. He was supposed to be included, but he refuses to be part of them. He still blames them for his pack's almost demise. They never lend him a helping hand when the rogues attack his territory when he was 14 or even when he reaches 18. They left a kid and his pack at the merciless hands of the feral wolves and rogues to die. Now that kid's pack is feared by all and he is usurping everything they have built and run, and one of his goals is that one day the neutral territory where his mate lives will also be his. He will make sure they crawl to his door, begging him on their knees to help him. Alan smiles. I know, but I like her. There is something about her that I couldn't get off my head. His word brought him back to reality, yet those words remind him of the reason why she is not next to him. The reason why he only has one friend in his lifetime. I still remember the first time we met, he says as Victor play with his wine before gulping it down. So what keeps you waiting? He questions Alan. Well, let's just say after I remove the jerk next to her. Victor chuckles and pretended to be uninterested in her. He didn't want to draw any attention or for his friend to think he has a thing for her. It will ruin the deal he just signed with his pack, so he kept his wolf emotion intact. He then takes a good look at the male and realizes that he was one of his former members. He ignores it and gulps his wine again. They went back to talk about their pack. He threw glances in her way twice until he saw her walking out of the dining hall. He pretended to slip the drink down, splashing it on his tux. He moves up and tries to wipe it off. The waiter tries to help him, but he dismissed them politely before asking for the restroom directions. He follows her scent, then he waited for her as she was in the ladies' room. The scent grew stronger and she walks passes him standing before him, her back on his. Victor reaches out his hands around her waist and his head in the nook of her neck. He murmurs behind her ear, sending shivers through her body. I miss your scent. He let go of her slightly. She turns to him and slaps him across the cheek. You rejected me, a jerk. Aren't you here to do that again? He chuckles. Maybe he teases, and she leans forward to him. And you know my answer to that very well. He grabs her arm, pulling her closer to him, and it won't be long enough until you accept it. I take rejection as someone blowing a bugle in my ear to wake me up and get going, rather than retreat. Sylvester Stallone. 5 years ago she was waiting for her brother-in-law Cameron to pick her up after school. She was sitting by the cement wall behind the school gate. Her legs hanging down and she plays with plain paper creating an origami while humming to herself. Once she's done she put it aside and try to make another. Footsteps were heard near her. She gawks aside finding her school's former hot jock from her school achievement board photos staring more like glaring at her with his arms around himself. Rumor has it that he was mostly fear of the kids in the neighboring pack and seeing him in front of her didn't seem to give her fear. She waited for it but there was nothing creeping up her veins, it was like she knew him, like she was closer to him. She finds it weird, making her feel awkward. His hand reaches out and he pulls her down from where she was sitting. Losing her balance, she waited for her face to hit the ground but he was holding her up, saving her young face from any bruises. Without words, he drags her to a secluded place, where there is just her and him. Name. He looks at her since he was an alpha and a senior even though he's in college, but still, he's her senior. So she told him straight away as she didn't want to create trouble with him or with anyone else. Isabel Hayes, she answers. Have you shift? He asks her again. No, her eyebrow went up. Why? He growls at her, making her cringe. You're a non-shifter, he whispers. Yell at her. Oh no, I'm sort of, not of age yet. His face looks pale. He keeps looking at her, then to the other aside. He was confusing her age. She just stood there. Age, his voice was loud and clear to her now this time. 15, he curses again. Only 3 more years before she could send her mate and she was happy to meet him even though the possibility of rejection might be high. She watches him with confusion. Her mind keeps telling her that he's crazy and she better run, like right now or never. He stops, her eyes zooming around avoiding his gorgeous eye. She felt him get near in a second, and once he did. His right hand going around her waist and the other cupping her face, and with that his lips find her. She froze, her mind running wild. Her first kiss, a 15-year, got kissed by a stranger and the most dangerous. She should have pulled away as any other good girls do, but his lips felt good on hers that she kisses him back. Her heart pounding with excitement and her toes curls at the sensation of his touch. She pushes him back once her mind hits the word mate. This kiss was supposed to be his, not the troublemaker. He calms himself first, then the next thing he did got her mind screaming in rage. It's funny, my Luna Alexis was everything you're not. He looks at her with disgust, making her heart drops. All memories of her so-called friends bullying her and kids in school mocking her over her stupidity flashes before her eyes. They always compare her with her amazing sister who got good grades, good looks, and to add an amazing mate. When she died because of her rare disease, she still could remember her parents' words, and she engraved them deep in her heart, the words that helped the bullying and assaults to become worse and almost lead to her committing suicide, as she didn't have many friends. Yet fate didn't go in her way as Cameron, her sister's mate, came and took her away from them and lived with him in the neutral territory with her nephew Clyde. This was a month ago and she is still trying to heal from everything. In fact, here is this guy putting her back to that place. She tries to compose herself from his harsh words. Comparison was something she hates the most as it reminds her of her past, the tortuous years she has lived through. He spoke again. I, Victor Salazar, Alpha of the Crimson Pack, reject you, Queen of Astoria. He smirks at her. She looks at him with disbelief. She mumbles, how could you? She tries to catch her breath. He's her mate. Why did he do that? How he rejected her, then call her a queen of the pirates devil? And without thinking she says in a calm voice, and I, Isabel Hayes, reject your rejection, king of narcissism. She hated that he has done what everybody else did. That's why she rejects his rejection even though he already kills her inside. You're someone I won't forget because you daunted my heart with your rejection. Present. He held her back when she turns to walk away. I thought today is the day where you say you miss me. You know, his hand was in his suit pocket and he was provoking her. Why would I? I thought your Luna was everything I am not, and plus you try to chase me out of our territory through the council. Too bad you can't do anything about it. She watches him took another step back. Yet I forgot about that. He tightens his jaw. She scoffs then walks past him. But I never forget how this feels like. She felt his hands around her waist again. How it feels like to be closer to you, to have those lips on mine again, then to reject you again. He smirks and she untangles his hands from her waist and is ready to slap him in the face again, except he was more than ready to stop her. She struggled in his arms, pushing him away from her. When she's free from his grasp, she slaps him once again, and yet she fails once more as he held her hand in the air. He gritted her teeth and he could tell that she was angry. She spat at him. Too bad, my answer will still remain the same. She pulls her hand away from his retreating steps and walks out there, taking up all the courage not to turn around and run into his arms again to have one kiss. The only kiss that she longs to repeat is the one that awakens her body. Too bad he has rejected her, might as well rest their case. Victor, on the other hand, was having a second thought. There's a side of him that refuses to let her go anymore or let her walk away from him. He was wrong when he rejected and compared her to Alexis, who was nothing to him but just a girlfriend whom he remembers nothing of. His first mate, whom everyone thought he loves dearly. Again he pushes all the thought of wanting Isabel away. Isabel almost runs into Alpha Alan when she went back. Hello, he stops her with his hand resting on her shoulder. Isabel only knew little of Alpha Alan. She met him at one of the parties her friend Aida dragged her to. He was one of Aida's boyfriends until she found her mate and moved away. They never knew each other personally. Isabel never really bothered to or was interested in getting to know the Alpha. She was only there at the party to say hi then goodbye to whomever she was introduced to at the party night. Meeting him again was awkward, even though he was a stranger to her. In fact, he was her friend's ex, which makes it weird to be around him. Although he seems to be friendly with her when he chose the restaurant where she works as part-timer to cater for the night's event. She squirms away from him, Alpha, and she ran past him into the dining hall. She finds almost everyone has finished eating. She moves to another table to clear the dishes and carry them to the kitchen. Balancing both plates on her hands, their sub-chef opened up the door for her. Thank you, Kiev. She walks inside and put them on the sink while Sheila, their other employee, was washing the dishes. Kiev move again to help her with the dishes. Aren't you supposed to be out there to chat with your fellow pack members? Nah, Crimson may be my pack, but the Mystic Pack is my home, he responds to her with a huge smile on his face. Kiev was not really friends with Isabel, and everyone in their workplace assumed they were once a couple due to his sweetness towards her. There was a time when people's thoughts and words get into his head, so he asks her out one time. Unfortunately, she rejected him. Isabel didn't want to give him any false hope. She didn't want to date anyone, not yet. She just simply wants to enjoy her freedom and heal herself completely before her doors open up for anyone. The night events concluded. Victor and his pack members were ready to go back to their pack. Isabel, who was behind a far corner of the packed hall, watches him while they bid goodbye to Alpha Alan. She was a bit jealous when she saw some of the girls, especially Alan's sister Carla, swoon over her mate. Only if he hadn't wanted her, only if he hadn't done what everyone did to her, which kills her deep inside. He saw the way his eyes lit up, those hazel eyes which made her lost easily. Remembering the first time she met him, he blew her mind away, as she never saw anyone so handsome, so cruel yet intriguing in her life. Tonight she may act like one of those big girls. Deep down inside, she and her wolf yearn for him. A car horn interrupts her thoughts. She turns to find Cameron waving at her from inside the car. She looks back and finds Victor's eyes on hers. She held his gaze for a while before going inside the car and left to go home. She cries silently once she reaches her room, slowly sinking to the ground, sleeping there on the cold tile. Assume I have kids with another when all I do was banging you. Stretching her arms wide in the morning, she felt Clyde tugging the fabric of her pajamas. She kisses him on the head, then sat down behind the island counter near baby Holly. She pecks her on the cheek, then pokes at her tummy playfully while she giggles in return. She plays with her while awaiting their breakfast cooked by the shirtless Cameron, who is busying himself with the pans in his hand. Honey Laura, Cameron's fiancée, and also Holly's mom step inside the kitchen with a shirt only. She wraps her arms around him, then kisses his neck. They started to make out. Now you two keep it PG, your kids are watching, Isabel complains, making them both giggle like high schoolers. Laura and Cameron met 3 years ago. They were second chance mates, yet Cameron was unsure as he still loves and has respect for his first mate, her sister, and his son. Indeed, Isabel gave him her blessing to move on with his life and to love again. She has also reassured him that her sister would have wanted it too. After a year, Laura got pregnant with a baby girl, and in honoring her sister's memories, Laura insisted to name her after Holly, Isabel's sister. Sometimes Isabel would see some part of her sister's character in Holly. So how did it go last night? Laura asked. Don't get me to start on it, she groans, puffing her cheeks like a child. Oh okay. So any plans for today? Laura put a plate of food in front of her. I'm on leave today and I want to take my favorite kids to the park. Laura winces at her. What? Are you sure you want to take 2 kids out? Trust me, Clyde can be a little demanding, and Holly. Don't fall for her baby eyes, darling. I'm warning you, they all laugh. You forgot I'm a werewolf version of Wonder Woman. She took a bite of her food, wiggling her eyebrow at her. Whatever, but cool, it will give us time to make another mini Laura or Cam. Isabel cut her off. Laura patted her eyes. No, we're not. Well, denial is a confirmation of it. She teases them and went up to get ready after eating breakfast. Sometime afterward, when the kids are both dressed and ready to go, Isabel settled them in their car seats and drove off to the park. They spent almost their whole day at the park. Many people mistook Clyde and Holly as her children. She didn't bother to correct them either. When it was time to go home, she packs their stuff in the car and picks up Holly, holding her to her hip before she held on to Clyde's hand. There was a pack of Hot's male wolves coming in their direction, heading to their cars. She tries to avoid running into them. Unfortunately, their luxury Audio A8, Range Rover, Mercedes S-Class, Bentley Bentayga, and a black Bugatti La Voiture Noire overshadows her old Nissan Versa Note. The sight of it dispirits her, but she put on the I don't care attitude and walked to her car with the kids. She got nearer and his scent hit her nostrils. It can't be, she told herself while holding the kids close to her. Praying that it wasn't him. You have kids, she heard a loud growl. Clyde hid behind her leg, tugging on her dress while Holly pushed her head in her chest. She turns to find him near the Bugatti. His Beta and the older version of his Beta, except the eyes, stood by. His hands were around a brunette with the others looking in their way. Last night was not good and today he just has to show up and ruin it again for her. What's worst was he is growling at her. Why would he? She thought. Yeah, got a problem with that alpha. She jumps when he smashes the Bugatti window with his fist. She didn't expect him to react in such ways. Who's the father? The onlookers stood by. She started to get scared because of the kids. They are yours, of course. Don't you remember banging me? He growls at her. Her heart racing in panic. She didn't think he would take her words seriously. She was hoping he would get the hint, but he doesn't. He started to move forward with his fist tight. She held on to the kids tightly, taking a step back, hoping for anyone to help them. Mommy, thanks, Moon Goddess, she silently prays as Clyde runs to Laura and Cameron, who have parked their car on the other side of the road, and walks towards them. Laura hugged him tightly. Oh, my sweet Mento. Alpha Hernandez. Cameron came behind Laura and took Holly from Isabel. Is everything all right here? Victor nodded his head to the others. No, I'm just glad to meet an old friend. He gestures to her. Well, it's been a long time, and since you guys are old friends, then why not join us tonight for dinner? She groans at Cameron's invitation. Ella doesn't hurt your friend's feelings. Cameron still doesn't get her infatuation over the alpha. Besides, he's also an old friend of mine. Don't you remember those times Victor? Isabel was confused at how Kim came to know the Alpha. Still, she prays again to the moon goddess not to let him come, but he just crashes her hopes again when he opens that mouth of his. The same mouth that rejects her. Of course I would love it, he happily replies to Cameron. All his mean and evil demeanor were gone. Great, she mumbles while getting in her car to go home prepared for dinner. Great, just great. Isabel sat in the living room feeling like an obedient child who is ready to perform for their guest. Cameron and Laura were busy in the kitchen, those two never let her step in there. A few more minutes, 7:45 p.m. and the doorbell rings. Isabel, can you get the door? It must be Alpha Victor, Cameron shouted from the kitchen. She stood up fixing her floral yellow dress above her knees before opening the door. Again the sight of him took her breath away. She tries to smile at him. Victor stood there, his eyes roaming her body. Aren't you going to come in, Alpha? His eyes kept on hers. She gulps her saliva nervously. Alp Victor. Someone came from behind him, breaking their stares from another one, rudely interrupting her. She watches her, wrapping her arms around him, then kisses his cheek. Oh, it's good to see you again, Ella. She smiles fakely at her. You too, Carla. Isabel knew Carla from high school, not forgetting Alpha, Alan's sister. She was a year older than her. They weren't the best of friends, they were just strangers from the same school. She clings to his side as her life depends on him. Isabel could feel her wolf surfacing. Isabel, is everything okay? Cameron came from behind her. Alpha, he nods to Victor, yet Isabel was still in the way. Hey man, scratching the back of his head. It's been a long time, yeah, 9 years now, both men chuckling. Isabel realizing that she's blocking the doorway, she said with a blush, oh I'm sorry Alpha, where are my manners, please come in. Victor took a step inside while Carla just stood there. It's good to have you here tonight. Kim hugged him once again in a brotherly hug. Carla, Victor calls back. Carla took his hand smiling, then walked past Isabel, who now holds the door open for them. She let out a big sigh as if she's been holding her breath for too long. Closing the door, she turns to follow them. Oh, my moon goddess, she jumps, holding her chest. Seriously, Kim, what? Why are you still standing here? He didn't seem to hear her. He was totally zoned out. Isabel saw Kim's hand in a fist, she then snaps her fingers in his face. Earth to Kim, he came out from whatever he was thinking of. His body language suddenly relax. I'm sorry, he apologizes, walking towards the kitchen, and she follows behind him. Laura was all smiley and chatting, entertaining their guest. She smiles at both of them. Kim went around kissing her cheek before sitting down. Isabel sat opposite their guest, Carla almost sitting on Victor. When their dinner began, Carla feed Victor, then blushes when he took a bite. Isabel, who was feeling hurt by the sight in front of her, watches her food, then took a small portion of it without looking up to their guest. So I heard your kids have grown up, Ella. May I ask where are they? Carla asks politely, and Laura burst into laughter. Oh dear Ella, since when did you have kids without telling us? Isabel half smile. I guess when I took your kids out. Carla look at them with confusion. Oh sorry, Carla, but Clyde and Holly are our kids, not hers, your kids. Carla asks again. Yeah, our kids. Kim held up Laura's hand, kissing it. Oh sorry Ella, is just that rumors went around of you got pregnant and your mate rejected you. I do sincerely apologize. Isabel wanted to laugh and say the last part was true, but instead she says it's okay, Carla. Their dinner continues on with the small talk. Isabel was like a fifth wheel between the couples. So when they were done, she volunteers to clean up the kitchen before heading to the living room. She stood by the door listening in while Victor and Kim chat lively with Laura and Carla on the other side, talking then giggling. How did you guys know one another? Both Kim and Victor turned towards Isabel. His sister Zoe was one of our best friends, so she used to bring him along. Not until he turns 15, and Zoe kind of move away already. Why do I feel like you're not telling me anything other than that? She regrets what she says, finding it awkward. She clear her throat. Sorry, but who wants dessert? She tries to smile. Both Carla and Laura stood up from their seat. Oh dear, come here, we'll get it, and they were fast to move to the kitchen. I'll just head up to my room, and she quickly went up to her room. She keeps fanning herself when she closes the door behind her. She was to open it again but find Victor standing there. He pushes her inside, closing the door behind them. She didn't get to utter one word as Victor beat her to it. Accept my rejection. He held on to her wrist. I thought you're accept or I'll make you pay, he growled at her. Carla is going to be my mate. She's better than you, so either you accept or you'll regret it. I'm sorry, but I can't, not when you didn't give me a good reason. He sneers at her. What more reason you want, hey? I don't see you as a better Luna, just trash of a woman who is lower than Alexis and Carla. He has crushed her there again, suppressing her tears. She holds her voice with stoic I can't, Victor, not when we're not even yet. He chuckles, then good luck with that, and he storms out. Isabel fell on the ground crying silently, hugging her knees to her chest. After a while she heard them leave, then she peeks out of the window. As if he knew she was watching, he grabbed Carla, kissing her one more time before they leave. Love Cox, Nica. She was staring at a blank space in front of her. Last night was another hectic. Victor was being cruel to her with his words. She wants him to want her. Yet his words were more painful than anything she ever encounters in her life. It's like he enjoys killing her from the inside. Isabel was so lost in her thoughts and wishes that she failed to notice Kiev, who says hi to her or even her visitors. Isabel, she glances aside to find her boss narrowing his deadly eyes at her. Table 10, is waiting. Sorry boss for zoning out, I promise you it won't ever happen again. Rapidly she grabbed the pen and the notepad from the counter and moves to go. She tries to fix her apron on her way. His scent overwhelming her, she froze in her step, slowly turning up to find him and Carla at table 10. Groaning with an irritation, she tries to put on a big fake smile. Good day Alpha, may I take your order please? She tries to keep it professional and be cool in front of them. Victor, on the other hand, was unfazed by her presence. I'll have a steak please, make it well done, Carla says, putting down the menu. Ella, she almost shouted due to her surprise. You're working here? Yes I do. Wow, how's Cam? She asks. Isabel furrows her brows. Well, Cam and Laura are fine with the kids. Carla bit her lip. That's good, she smiles. Alpha. Isabel turned to Victor. The best of this restaurant. He didn't even take a look at the menu. Isabel's smile coming right up. Alpha. Carla, please enjoy. She didn't need to think of the menu. She knew what was the best in taste, even though it's the highest in price. So she chose her favorite food in the restaurant, even though she only had it once as it was expensive. Lucky for her, Kiev was kind enough to treat her with it on her birthday. She quickly scribbles it down and passes it in the kitchen, labeling it Alpha Victor. 5 minutes the food was ready, the chef and Kiev serve it. She watches from behind the counter, both chefs bow their heads and head back to the kitchen. She watches him caressing Carla's cheek, then letting her taste his food before taking a scoop of it. They look good together. Her wolf Anya whimpers and she sighs, feeling a little bit of jealousy. Then suddenly Carla coughs up. She signals for Victor, who instantly got to her side. He waves to their other waiter, who rushes to their side. There was a panic look in the face of their waiter. He urges for the other one, who rushed there, then came running to her direction. Isabel put off her apron and walked quickly there. She can't breathe. Victor tries to calm Carla down while she was coughing up badly. She began to shook up with a red rash now growing on her skin. Isabel froze. The waiter crouched down with milk in his hand. Carla quickly took a gulp, calming down her breath. Indeed, it didn't fully heal her. What did you put in the food? Isabel was barely breathing. Victor growled at her. What did you put in the food? She flinched. I didn't. Don't just stand there, he shouted to the others. Kiev rushed beside her. Does she have any allergy? Carla tries to breathe again to say something but she fails. The ambulance arrives. Carla was quickly taken into it. Victor turns back to her after calling someone on the phone. What did you do? I didn't do anything. She was getting scared now and began to panic by Victor, who raises his voice at her with his wolf surfacing as if it's want to rip her apart. Sir, with much due respect, she wasn't the one who cooked. Sean, one of their waiter, interrupts. But she's the one who recommended. She didn't say anything. Victor grabs his jacket. You better hope she's okay. He storms off. Isabel, run after him. Victor, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I swear that was the best. He yanks off her hand. Stay out of my face. You're one of the miserable mates, you don't deserve to be a wolf, and he walks off. She was heartbroken. Tears slip down her eyes. Her boss calls her back in the office and without giving her a chance to justify herself, he fires her on the spot. He also made her stay behind to clean up the kitchen before leaving the restaurant with no one to help her. If she doesn't do it, he won't give her any payment. When the day was done, Isabel stays after work cleaning the whole kitchen and mopping the floor while sobbing. She couldn't help but cry and did her work, thinking Victor was maybe right that she didn't deserve to be a wolf. She's the weakest of them, who couldn't even fend for herself. She has been abused, compared, assault, and now her mate is doing his worst. Yet she couldn't bring herself to reject his rejection. Maybe there is a part of her that still wants him to have a chance with him, or the fact she wants to seek revenge but she doesn't know how to. After closing off, she bid her goodbye to the dark restaurant before going to her car. Her wolf keeps whimpering inside her, and for a moment she felt like that she has been watched. Quickly she unlocks her car, starting the engine, and went home. When she arrived, she saw the lights were off and everyone was already asleep. She creeps inside the house without making a noise, and right when she was to close her eyes, she saw a figure standing outside her bedroom's balcony. Even if I have already rejected you, I'll always watch you from the sidelines silently. That's how much I care for you. Victor kept on banging his head against his car seat. How could he have said all those things to her? It wasn't even her fault that Carla was in the hospital. She wouldn't have known it was his fault alone for trying to make her jealous. He wonders how could she not understand him and accept his rejection. His enemies are watching everywhere, waiting for a chance of his mate appearance. In fact, he was good at hiding everything. They would use her against him, and Victor knew he wouldn't let a single hand on her hair, not in a million. He thought back at the restaurant how he was only trying to push her away to put on a show and to stop his wolf, who was almost on the brink of marking her there. Sighing heavily, he unbuckled his seatbelt and got off the car to go for a run. His wolf really needed it, and without much anticipation, he suddenly turns, running to the restaurant's direction where she works. When he got there, he shifts into his human form, grabbing a basketball short hidden under a tree. It's usually where the werewolves leave their clothes so that when they shift it can come in handy. He then hid behind a tree in the dark, watching her, who was mopping the floor. She looks as if she's weeping, and for a moment he felt bad for what he did. Actually, he was guilty of what he has done to her earlier, especially when uttering those bitter words of her not deserving to be a wolf. His wolf whimper in a possessiveness mode. Victor sniffed the air there and found an unwanted scent. There are rogues in the area tonight. So he then mind-linked Gem to get there. His eyes wander around until it found 8 of them waiting in the parking lot, their eyes fixed on his mate. He couldn't quite suppress his snarl at them, which resulted in getting their attention. Victor didn't give them time to prepare, as in a snap of a motion he was in front of them. His hand around one of the rogues' neck, ready to snap it. State your business, rogues. It is none of your business. Was here to take our hostage, then we leave peacefully. Another one reply, which made Victor laugh haughtily. Hostage? Peacefully? You see, that's when you're wrong. Without another word, he tightens his grip before snapping the rogue's neck. his wolf side coming out and taking control of his human mind and body. He then turns to the other with a quick speed, killing them until one is left. The rogue didn't cower back or even run for his life. He took a stance in front of him, ready to attack Victor. Maybe I'll let you live if you tell me the reason why you're willing to take someone else's mate since she isn't yours. He spits in Victor's face. Pathetic. Then what's the fun in doing that? Are you sure I'm pathetic? Yes, whether you like it or not, our boss will have her tonight. Victor sneer at the rogue. You know all alpha can spare one as a messenger or for info. My rules, I don't keep any lives for such things. The rogue's eyes widen, realizing his mistake, that this alpha is none other than the ruthless Victor of the Crimson Pack. Before he could do anything, Victor was quick to snap his head, killing him on the spot. It was easy as a piece of cake to him, cause killing was one of his skills. Instead of Jem, Kyle, and 3 other pack members arrive later on. Alpha, he cocks his head aside, seeing the bodies on the ground. He grimaces. Oh, I see you've been working out here. Where's Jem? Victor asks. He is dealing with some minor issue on the border. Victor squint his eyebrow. Why wasn't I informed of it? We did, Alpha, but your link was unreachable. It like you shut us off completely after you mind linked Jem to be here. Victor didn't have anything to say of that. He motions for the others to clean up the bodies, and as they were doing his order, Kyle looks around. Wanna tell me why you're out here, Victor? He put his hand on his shoulder. Victor didn't respond, and right when Kyle was to ask again, his eyes found the same girl they met at the park in the restaurant cleaning. Isn't that Cam's? I want you and the others to watch over her tonight, Victor chirping in, completely cutting him off. Kyle nodded his head with understanding. The rogues were here for her. He then turns back to Kyle, thanking him before he went to go home. Indeed, he didn't quite go home straight, as he turns in another direction and went to her home instead of masking his scent. He climbs up the balcony to her room. He stealthily went inside and lie on her bed for an hour, taking in her scent. He saw the lights outside the house. She was home. He quickly moves outside, closing the doors to her balcony, and waited for her. 30 minutes pass and he saw his beautiful mate coming inside. He watches as she moves from her closest to another door connected to her shower, then emerging out after another 50 minutes. Victor smiles foolishly at how she looks more beautiful, and hot in her shirt only, which reaches below her thighs. It was only when she was asleep and safe that Victor finally decided to go home. Stupid wolf, he mumbles, blaming his wolf for his actions tonight. Admitted you already fell in love with her, his wolf retort as they run back home to deal with some problems on their borders. A friend will always be a friend, we can never be lovers. As I am meant to be your family, not your mate, girlfriend, or your dear wife. Cameron watches Isabel pacing from the kitchen to the living room like a dead zombie for an hour in the morning. Would you cut that crap out and tell me why you're like a walking dead in the house? She jumps when she heard Cameron's voice. Turning around, she saw Cameron for the first time since she was downstairs. She hasn't noticed him, not until now. Cameron plops on the couch in the living room. Yet, and would you stop popping out of nowhere? You almost gave me a heart attack. Werewolves don't get that. Now come sit here and tell me what's wrong. Cameron has always been a rock to her life once he saved her from her awful life. He was her brother, father, mother, you name those relationships excluding the intimate one, cause he was her family, nothing else. He took care of her when the people who should have been doing that job were neglecting her instead. Cameron remembers the first time he took her here. She was so afraid of him that her first 2 weeks living with him she kept herself inside the room. The only time she makes contact with him was when he drove her to school or fetch her thereafter. Not until one fateful day when he was 30 minutes late in picking her up. Cameron couldn't find her anywhere, so he went from empty classroom to classroom and couldn't find her. Until he heard someone whimper from the janitor's room. His wolf instincts kicked in. Rushing towards it, he finds the old-school human janitor standing in front of her with his hand to his waist belt as if he's ready to pull down his pants, while Isabel was on the ground weeping with fear in her eyes. She was only a child at 15 and didn't have her wolf either, so she didn't have the advantage and was only vulnerable to this man. He didn't give him any chance as Cameron beat him to his near death before dragging the almost dead body to the principal's office. There he was fired before the police took him to jail. There was no investigation either, as the staff just found out that there were also girls who were victims of the bastard's malicious crime. He took her to the hospital after that day for a checkup. It turns out she was okay, the sick bastard didn't rape and took away her innocence. Cameron thanks his mate and the moon goddess for it. For the first time, Isabel began to speak, uttering 2 words to him, "Thank you." From then on she slowly opens up to him until he was her rock and trusted him more than anyone. Oh boy, she was the cheekiest girl who always fought with the babysitter, yet she was really good in handling Clyde. There were a lot of good memories with her for the past years, and the most memorable one is when she manhandled the 25-year-old babysitter at the age of 16 when she tries to kidnap Clyde. He laughs at the memories. Turning to her again, he pats the space on the couch beside him. "Come on, tell me." Isabel sat beside him, her face in her hands. "Tell me what's wrong, Isabel." She looks back at him with tears in her eyes. "I lost," she cries. "My job." She kept on whimpering like a child. Cameron pulled her in his arms. "Hey now, come on, you can always find another one." He comforts her. Cameron knew how much Isabel loves her job. It may be a job that others may look down upon, but Isabel was always enthusiastic about it. She didn't even care if other wolves don't like it. To her, a job is a job, and that job was her first one, and it was like her second home. He couldn't understand why Shane would fire her when all he does was praise Isabel to him. He looks down again at Isabel, who now has wet his favorite shirt with her tears. He then smiles, not to her pain but the fact that she has grown up, still acts sometimes like a child, and Holly watching over them must be really proud. "Isabel," he pulls her to face him, "everything is going to be fine, you're going to get another job, okay? Now stop crying or you will break Holly," he refers to her sister and Clyde's heart, "so get up. You'll find another one." She started to calm down as if she's sniffing the air. She turned to him. "I think I burnt the brownies." Cameron got up instantly, grabs the extinguisher from the other side of the house using his werewolf speed and rushes to the kitchen. He came back surprisingly to find Victor in the living room glaring at Isabel and Laura beside him with the groceries in her hands. "Hey hon," he walks to her and pecks on the lips, taking them into his hands. Laura fakes a smile and Cameron misses it. He turns to Victor. "Hello Alpha Victor, it's good to see you again buddy," his arms reaching out to hug him. If any other wolves were there apart from Laura or Isabel would have noticed the adrenaline going through Victor as his body was rigid and muscles were tightening as if he is ready to break Cameron apart. "I wouldn't miss the opportunity to hang out with an old friend," and he turns to Isabel, who gulped, winking his eye at her. "Time to scare you, mate. I am your nightmare, your beautiful nightmare." He sneers at her the whole time he was at their house, even talk about how Carla and he loves each other. It became worst when Cameron and Laura went up to ready the kids. Victor moves too fast in front of her, his hand almost breaking her wrist, taunting her to accept the rejection or he'll continue appearing in her nightmares like the children's boogeyman, or even better, Freddy and Jason. Even though Isabel felt like throwing the white towel in his arena, yet her wolf was there to encourage her to be strong and not to give up, solidifying her refusal to accept the rejection in order to break the bond. Days pass and Victor never fails to keep his promise of tormenting her. Isabel became exhausted of him showing up everywhere she goes. Even when she was looking for a job, Victor is always there with Carla in his arms. He also has the decency to show up at a cafe near his territory where she found a new job. It was like he knew where she was heading to, and every time she told herself that she is going to start a new day, new life, Victor always pop up to give her a reminder of her past. Today was one of those days, and she hated him for it. Yet she refuses to accept his rejection as it will only mean he won. She didn't want to be the sore loser in his game. Miss, you forgot my change. She turns up to find a bubbly young female with raven hair and hazel eyes which caught much attention of the unmated wolves in the cafe. I'm sorry, she apologizes, handing her $100 change to her. It's just that she tries to look away from Victor, who was sitting at the corner table with Carla. Their hands entwine together and they look in love together. He's a catch, right? The young she-wolf beams and Isabel turned back to the female in front of her advertisement. I'm sorry, who? Isabel was confused. The she-wolf extended out her delicate hand to her. I'm Cora. She smiles. Her wolf didn't feel threatened by her, so she shook hers in return. I'm Isabel. Nice meeting you. She half smiles. The doorbell rings. She saw the beta coming inside. He stood beside Cora. Hey, he says to Cora, who blushes aside. So where is that bro? Cora coughs loudly, not for Isabel to hear. Her eyes signally to Jem aside. She didn't want her to know that Victor is her brother, as it will ruin a chance of her being her friend given her brother's history. She also admires Isabel's beauty, and seeing her stare at her brother she wished she was his mate and her sister-in-law to be instead of Alan's sister Carla. The girl surely loves to do matchmaking for werewolves couples, as if she is the moon goddess herself. Sometimes she complains to the moon goddess in her prayers for mismatching people. Like when Kyle turns out not to be her mate but some idiot who refused to acknowledge their bond even though he's not rejecting her. Jem looked confused for a minute, then turned in front of them to find Isabel. He remembers her from the night of the treaty with the Crescent Pack. Oh hey, I know you, the waiter from Gustav's Catering and Restaurant, right? Advertisement. Isabel smile. She wishes that instead of saying a waiter, how about a compliment like you're the girl whom I stalked that night, she thought with sarcasm. Correct, in fact, that was before, now I work here. Cora watches Jem face turn red. Oh look who's blushing, I never thought I won't see the day, our bet. He clamps his hand on her mouth and reach out his other hand to Isabel. Jem. Nice meeting you, Jem. Isabel. Another guest arrived. She turned to find the look-alike Jem with his girlfriend, then followed by Alpha Alan. He nods in her way, then to Cora and Jem. Hey Cora, Jem, where's the Alpha? Cora turns to point at Victor's and Carla's table at the corner. They started walking there. Hi Alpha. Alan waved his hand at her. Alpha, she responded formally. Isabel didn't want to be rude as he was an alpha. I'll see you around, Isabel. Cora gave her a big grin, waving goodbye before going with Jem and the others. She sighs under her breath. This is not good. Her day was already ruined by the sight of the lovesick couple. When they were done, Victor never fails to hurt her again by kissing Carla in front of her, in which she rolls her eyes in return and continues to do her work. Advertisement. The cafe closes. Everyone has already gone home. Isabel looks at her wristwatch and saw 7:45 p.m. She mops the floor before going out. Smiling to herself, she tries to forget Victor and other things. Taking a deep breath, she smelt a corpse stale which she wanted to throw up as she was breathing in the disgusting smell. Cursing under her breath, wishes that she didn't take in that smell. Growls and snarls were heard, and when she turned to go, 2 wolves emerged from the woods, both in blood, and they fought brutally. She wanted to move, or rather help, but she didn't know which is the good one. Also, there were no houses or any other work near this cafe. Another piercing growl was heard. She turned to find a big brown wolf in blood howling at her. His smell was so bad, that instead of running away she froze. Isabel has only shifted once. She has a strength in humans due to her wolf presence, but she hasn't shifted again after her first shift. She barely survived her first shift due to her body being weak and her being traumatized by her past. The wolf, as if he's grinning, snarled once more before running in her direction. Her heart accelerated the normal heartbeat. Her eyes widen then close, waiting for her death as her body fails to move. Oh moon goddess, she prays. I always love to see your pretty face, my dear. Oh moon goddess. He mimics her voice with shriek. Is that all you have to say when you're about to die? He looked at her sternly. You can hear my thought. She tries to hide her embarrassment. No, but you were practically screaming out loud when that rogue was about to rip you apart," she smiled with gritted teeth at him. Jem says as his look-alike who saves her came from behind him. "Today is your lucky day, dear. Next time I think you have to kiss your mate goodbye if this side is under attack again," his voice in affirmative. He was not childish as Jem. "Wait, are you saying was under attack while you were busy cleaning your precious of a cafe?" He cut her off and she glares at him. "First off, this is a neutral territory and the council hasn't mind link out any warning. Secondly, this is not my precious cafe." She folded her arms, turning to the other side like a child. "Childish much? I see why he needs a babysitter near you." His last words were in a low whisper that Isabel, who was busy feeling embarrassed, couldn't even hear him. "Oh come on Kyle, stop harassing the poor girl." Jem jabbed his brother on the shoulder. "Isabel, this is my brother Kyle and please don't mind him." Rolling her eyes, she took a step towards her car. "Thank you again for saving me." She grinned at Kyle, who was quick enough to snap the rogue's head before he murdered her there with cold blood minutes ago. Another car pulled over in front of the restaurant. She turned to find Kiev. "Hey Ella." Kiev stride towards me, then crushing her into a bear hug. "Glad you okay?" The boys, in seeing this, groan with irritation. "This girl has so many names and almost know all of our werewolf race." "Hey, that's not true, I only know him and my family," she pouted in complaint. Kyle turned to walk towards the other side. Jem stayed rooted beside her with his arms around himself. "Oh, I almost forgot Kiev, Jem." "Jem, this is Kiev." Jem interrupt her. "I know him." He ignore Kiev's hand that reach out to shook his. "Is the coast clear, Kyle?" he called to his brother, who replied with a yes. He turned back to Kiev. "Stay away from us," his growl thundering that it almost blown her away if she was only a sheet of paper. "See you around, kiddo." And they both turned to go back in the woods with Jem already shifted in his wolf form while Kyle was still in his human form. She turned her attention back to Kiev. "So how's it going? I mean, how was your day?" she asked, and Kiev, who has been staring back at her for a while, scratched his hair. "It was all right, you?" "Good." They talked for a while before Kiev invited her to go with him on a dinner just as friends, which she agreed to. She was getting in her car with excitement when she felt a whoosh of air almost like a wind blowing from her back, then her legs going up in the air. She waited to hit the ground, but it never did as she was carried by two arms, none other than Kyle. "Sorry, Alpha's orders." Kyle grinned at a shocking Isabel in his arms and couldn't even mutter a single word. He looked at Kiev. "Your date can wait for another day." "It's not a date," Isabel quickly denied without getting out of his hold. "Aw, cute." Kyle half smiled to her. She was about to protest by putting up a fight after gaining some composure to get out of his hold, but Kyle apologized again, taking her out completely. He uses a trick, their pack use on anyone when they kidnapped or taking them out without a kill. Nobody else knew about, just them, the top warriors, those who are loyal to Victor. "Stay away from her," he warns Kiev before taking off with a limp Isabel in his arms. Isabel woke up with a pain in her back and her head pounding in pain. She sat up from a cold floor only to find out she's in a cell with 4 other prisoners. "Awesome, I thought I'm going to get a VIP room," murmuring to herself. Heavy footsteps was heard, then a key pressing to the cell locker. Suddenly the cell door opens and there stood Victor, who looked somewhere else and not her. The other 4 cower back with fear when they saw him, while Isabel stay still in her current place without making another move. Jem came from behind without knowing. Isabel began to call out names. All 4 prisoners were released to go, or that what Isabel thought. Victor never moved. "What is she doing here?" he asked Jem, who seems to realize the only prisoner left in the cell. Kyle brought her here." He mind-linked Kyle instantly. "Why did you bring her here?" he asked Kyle, who now stood in the cell on his right side. Isabel felt small under their gazes. "You say to bring those who have seen us fought near the neutral territory with the rogues. She's one of them." Alpha. Isabel watches as Victor clench his fist. "I would like for you two to give us some time alone." Isabel slowly moved backwards. The 2 brothers bow their head, showing respect to their alpha before exiting the cell. Victor began to take one step by step towards her. The cell door closed. Victor dropped down to his haunches in front of her. His hand went up to her cheek. Isabel tries to move away but he forces her to look at him. She knew he wasn't Victor, the one before her was not Victor who has demands acceptance of his rejection, this was a whole different Victor. There was no emotion or any resolution evident in his eyes or that handsome face of his. His aura was a strong. This was the cold-hearted alpha and a beast whom people fear. He smirked at her and Isabel could see an evil glint behind that smirk. It's good to see you again, mate. I hope you're more than happy now, to see me like this. Victor smiled inwardly to himself. Today he was going to make her accept the rejection. He knew what he was going to do with her, he's going to show her his side that only his enemies knew of. His wolf has warned him not to do anything to her, yet he was too stubborn to listen. His pack is his first priority and he did not want anyone to realize his mate is her. Therefore, he wanted her to accept it quickly as dangerous was lurking around his territory, especially the territory that he wants to take over. He smirked at her, hiding his emotions and everything that would give away his seriousness in doing this. It's good to see you again, mate. He leans forward to her, his hold on her chin was tight in which she pushes him off with so much force, making him landed. Since he was on his haunches, scurrying away from him, her eyes roaming around for anything that could help her defend herself. Stay away from me, she warns him, make another move and I'll, she stutters. Victor, who watches in amusement, laughs at her with mockery. He stood up, dusting off the dirt on his short. He wasn't going to rape her. No, he would never do that or has ever done that to any girl, forcing them against their will. Same goes with his mate, but all he needed to do was just to scare her and place the thought of him being the disgusting mate in her head. Taking another step towards her, Isabel moved backwards until he trapped her in a corner and she has nowhere else to go. Victor saw a fear in her eyes along with that vulnerable state she's in. Yet he didn't seem to faze by it. He grinned, picking her up and slammed her against the cell wall. I'll keep doing this until you say I accept your rejection. Isabel nodded her head no. He tightened his hold around her neck. Shall we go on? Do your best, I don't care. He slammed his other fist near her in which she flinched before throwing her on the other side. She winced in pain, still she refused to give him her answer. He then closed the gap between them, holding her up against the wall again. Only this time he was closer to her with their clothes keeping them apart. He smirks at her again. Interesting, how about this? His breath was hot on her face. He was to rip the side of her shirt when she became hysterical and screamed, thrashing in his arms like a feral beast. Victor suddenly let go of her and she began to sob on the ground, murmuring, more like begging him not to do this to her. Emotions swell within him, seeing this other side of her that he wasn't aware of. He moved to her but her scream increases, then her body began to shake. Victor began to panic. He didn't know what to do. He was only going to scare her a little, but seeing her like this, definitely tells him another story. His mate was not the perfect one like those Luna he saw and read of. She was just as broken as him. He ignored her screams and gathered her in his arms, holding her tight to his chest, whispering soothing words to her ear. Her body and scream began to calm, her breathing slowly diminish. Then the most unthinkable thing happens which make Victor gone crazy and his wolf almost took over his body. Isabel went limp in his arms, there was no sign of her breathing. Her body just shut down immediately. The cell door opens. Jem, who was alert through the mind link, thought something must have happened to his alpha. He stood there watching him hold her body close. He looked up with tears in his eyes. I think she's... Jem rushed to his side. Victor, she needs a doctor. He growled at him, but Jem understood his alpha. This must be his mate. Alpha, she's going to be okay after the doctor check on her. He then mind links their doctor with urgency without delay. Victor, Bertram is almost here. Do you still want others to know about her? He finally let go of her body. Dr. Bertram stood in the doorway. He made his way to Jem rapidly, who now held Isabel in his arms. They lay her on the ground and Victor tries to suppress his possessive side from showing. After few minutes of the doctor and Jem busying around, Isabel finally breathed at last. Victor was more than grateful at the moment Jem thanks the doctor before taking her out of the cell. Victor stay in there for a minute before releasing his growls, his wolf side and all their anger destroying the cell. He went back to their pack house taking a shower, then went to a room that Jem mind links he has put her in. He saw her lying there on the bed, the only thing moving in the room was the beat of her heart. He couldn't believe what he has done today lead to her in bed. Closing his eyes, Victor knew that today he has totally destroyed their bond and there was nothing good he could do to return what he did to her in the cell, and all those past few weeks he was torturing her. There was no need to scare her anymore, as it is clear now that what he did was unforgivable. He took out his phone to dial down the number of one person whom he has been ignoring for years now. The one person who could understand and could give him the best advice in this situation. He placed it to his ear, listening as it rang before it picked up. The female with a cheering voice answers. Many years has passed, the years they separated, yet he could still remember her voice. Hello, she repeated again. Still he doesn't answer. Look, if you are pranking me then I suggest you play with some other kid, I swear I'll whip you. He called out her name, cutting her rambling off. They were both silent until she uttered his name, more surprisingly, Victor. After you, I will make sure to never love again. At least it's what you taught me as a mate. When she woke up a day after Victor's scare out of her, more like giving her a lifetime nightmare, she finds herself back in their house. Laura spent most of her time with the kids while Cameron was being attentive to her most of the time. He has always been there for her, trying to make her act normal and live a normal life without fear. He went to an extent where he trained her for the past 2 weeks how to defend herself. Cameron told her that Victor has suggested for him to when he dropped her off that day. He told her that Victor never explained what happens to her, and Isabel didn't even bother to share. Speaking of Victor, Isabel never saw him again since the incident in his pack cell. She was doing better, and for a whole week she managed to get back up on her feet, plus her training were really helpful. The council has been giving out warning alerts for rogues around the border. Hey, Cameron came from the stairs with Holly in his arm. You're working today? Yeah. Why? He put her in her crib next to Clyde, who was on the floor in the living room playing with his pile of toys. I want you to come home early. I already asked Kyle to drop by to pick you up. Kyle, she asked in confusion. How did you forgot Alpha? Victor's sister was one of our friend, and I know almost everyone in that pack. Okay, and she grab her bag, then kisses Holly and Clyde before heading out. See you later, guys. She decided to go by taxi to work today and let her car rest for a day. After all, she didn't have the money to fix it if it broke down again. Cora has shown up to her work today. Hey Isabel, she beams at her. How have you been doing? Great, she replies. Cora took a seat by the counter, eyeing the pastries on display. I'll have your Afghan cookie and a mocha. Isabel quickly attended to her order, then settled down behind the counter opposite her. Luckily they have fewer guests to attend to, so it was good to have a little chat with her new friend. I've heard you been to our pack. Isabel gawked aside. Yet I was, due to a rogue's attack, and I happened to be here when they did. She didn't want to talk about the real reason, so she watches as Cora took a bite of her cookie. This is so good. Then she leans forward. And I also know our Kyle is picking you up. Oh yeah, my brother-in-law Cameron asked him to. Cora just nodded her head and took a sip of her mocha. So do you want to visit to my pack again? Isabel half smile. I would love to, but I just can't. Cora pressed her lips together. Okay. The doorbell ring. They both turn to Kiev, who waves at her. Kiev has been there for her in the past weeks. He has been a very supportive friend to her, and Isabel never told him anything about her life as she just avoid the topic and talk on other things. He was near to them. Cora suddenly have that distasteful look on her face. She pushes away her plate, standing up. I think I just lost my appetite. I'll see you some other day Isabel. She grab her purse from the counter and head out. What's with you and the Crimson Pact members? She asked Kiev. They're just jealous that they don't get to have this handsome face and body, he jokes, taking a seat before her. Really Kiev, are you sure? You didn't do anything to make you the #1 hater to your former pack members. Nah, not sure of, but I think they just didn't like the fact I turned down little Miss Prissy who was walking out of here. Oh yeah, before you say mate, no we're not, he grins. Isabel whack him on the back of the head. Miss Prissy is a friend of mine, so don't mock her, he warns him. They talk again for a while before he went back to his work. He still works at the restaurant she used to work. After him she went back to continue with her duties in the cafe. When she closes down for the day, Kyle was already there to pick her up then to drop her off home. They didn't talk that much on their way as it was so awkward to her. So they just made small talk and then that was it. She opens the door to only welcome with voices and she closes her eyes once she heard the other unwanted voice coming from the living room. I don't need your pity or your love, thank you. What's going on here? She asked while looking between Cameron and Victor, who seems to be hiding something from her, something that the boys didn't know that she was already aware of. Isabel has walked in them talking, and what she hated the most is when Cameron told him bits of her past, not the almost rape part but the one where her parents neglected her as their daughter. Before Cameron could say anything further she made herself known to them. Guys, I know, as if they were caught in action. Neither of the boys spoke up, so she asks to have a moment alone with Victor. Once her bedroom door closed, Isabel saw the look in his eyes. There was definitely pity there, which she hated the most. Her wolf whimper for their mate's closure, but Isabel wasn't a fool enough to let it happen, not after everything he did to her. Isabel, I'm sorry. She stops him right there. So what? Let me guess you want to take back your rejection now just because you pity me now. Victor moves to her, but she took a step back. Tell the truth, Victor. He tries to move to her again, but she pushes him back. No, it's not true. I don't pity you. This is me telling you how I really feel, that I am truly sorry for everything and be the moon goddess because I really do care for you, Isabel. She laughs at him. Care? She scoffs. I think you should reconsider your words, but mark mine, Victor. I'll never love you back, and it doesn't mean I'll accept your rejection or reject you. I'll make you pay, Victor. Isabel strutted past him, leaving them behind. She walks up to Cameron. You didn't have to do that, telling him my life. It's my choice whether to tell him or not. Look, I trust Victor and I want him to protect you when or if I'm not around, especially when there are constant attacks on the border. He tries to reason with her. Yet she only looked at him with disappointment. Laura instantly took the kids up, Clyde waving goodbye at her. Maybe you should look for your mate, Isabel. I thinks it's time. She laughed at that, haughtily muffling any words he was to say. Well, guess what, Cam, I don't have to because he is my mate, she screams at him before storming outside of the house. Now Cameron knows her secret, the one that she wanted to keep between just him and her. She quickly dialed Kiev's number. She waited for him to answer it. Hello, he answers. Kiev, can you please come pick me up? Okay, sure thing. 10 more minutes and Kiev was there to pick her up. Before she got into the car, someone calls her. She turned to find Victor in front the house. Isabel, please don't this. He came running out of the house towards her. Isabel, please come back to the house, let's talk this out. Ignoring him, she threw one last look at him before getting into Kiev's car. She saw him in the mirror still looking at them as they left. Victor cursed under his breath. Turning around, he got tackled down on the lawn, then received 2 punches at him. His wolf has now resurfaced, hating that someone just disrespect them. What exactly did you do to her? Cameron screams at him. Victor flip him on his back. You dare throw me another punch and my wolf and I won't hesitate to make you a cripple for life. He let go of him, then lying on the lawn beside him. Why did you do that to her? Cameron asks. Victor didn't speak for a minute. He thought back on his conversation with his sister Zoe. Yes, she was the one he called for advice, in which she blown him off, lecturing him on the life of a mate and he should be the one to protect, not to push her away. She also suggested for him to apologize to her instead of ignoring her. Well, it took weeks for Victor to muster up that courage, and here he was trying to make things right but only to turn in another direction. How messy their situation is and how f up his life now. He slowly began to tell Cameron about everything, starting from the time he rejected her, comparing her to Alexis up until last week. Victor told him a reason which for Kim was understandable from a male wolf perspective. Did you love her? Cameron asks Victor. Alexis, did you love her as your first Luna and mate despite her cheating on you with Kiev? Victor quickly responded, no, I never loved her, not even once. I was too young to realize or reciprocate those feelings for anyone. I have too many obligations at the time to care. Kim half smile and Isabel. I care for her, and she's the first one I want to protect and care for. You know, I started to want to love someone in the wrong time. I found her at the time where my pack needs me the most. Cameron pat him on the shoulder. Then tell her that, show her more than what you just made of. I still don't like what you did, but I prefer you over the cheating jerk who just picked her up. They sat there for a while before Victor bolt upright, cursing more to himself. What is it? Kim asks. Gem mind links. There's an attack on our south border by the rogues and hunters. He gazed back at Cameron. Look out for her. He turned away from Cameron, rushing into the woods, and shifted into his wolf form. Whatever you say, just say it and make sure you mean it. Isabel never bothered to go home that night after a confrontation with Victor and Cameron. The jerk has the nerve to say he cares, she complains to her wolf, who hasn't even talked to her or give her any sign at all that she's alright in there. She went to get ready, but before she does that, Kiev handed her some clothes he bought for her. Isabel was grateful for having Kiev as a friend. After getting ready, he dropped her off at work, which to her dismay Victor was there already waiting for her. What do you want, Victor? She walked past him and slammed the door, then to her locker in the staff room. After she changed into her uniform and apron, she came back inside with Victor seated by the counter. Isabel, can we talk please? He begged her. She looked around. There were no customer. In fact, Victor is the first one. She gazed back at him. What, Victor? She folded her arms, then sat down. He cleared his throat, then looked her in the eyes. I'm sorry for everything that I've done to you, Isabel was to retort, but he stops her. I am deeply sorry for everything, I really am. I don't need you to, but all I ask is for you to give us a chance, and I promise I'll show you how really sorry I am. Isabel laughed with hysterical "Oh Alpha Victor, I hate to say this but no can do for you," she reaffirmed. Victor moved to her, grabbed her wrist, pleading with her. Please Isabel, he begs. She pushed off his hands. Never touch me again, she growls at him. He took a step back. Isabel, no, now get out of here Alpha before I call the council. When he has gone, giving up in one, or that was, she thought. She refused to cry and carry out with her work. She put on her smiley face, welcoming her guests and bidding them goodbye. Alpha Alan happens to drop by her cafe. He sat by the window table. She walked towards him. Anything you would like, Alpha? He turned up to her, his lips curve up in a smile. Yeah, just coffee would do, make it black. She took his order and went back to do it. She came back a few minutes with a plate filled with chocolates, muffin on the side, and their cafe best cookies along with his tea. She settled it on the table before him. Ms. I didn't. No worries Alpha, it's on the house. She graciously smiled at him and head back to serve her other customers. She was busy placing orders when Alpha Alan came up to her again. This time he offered her a dinner, in which she declined politely. When she was done with work, she went back home thinking hard on what to tell Cameron. Victor happens to be there too, with flowers in his hands this time. Offering peace, but Isabel after he left dumps it in their rubbish bin with a thought, no can do Alpha. Cameron came back, and after bidding Victor goodbye, you want to talk about it? I'm sorry. She began to apologize to him. I'm sorry for screaming at you and not coming back last night. He opens up his arms. Isabel dejectedly hugged him in return. I know and I understand, but I hope you forgive Victor someday as he has his own reason. She pulled back. Can't do that, can't, or you won't. Isabel groaned. Both. They both talk for an hour before they got a warning from the council again that their east side border has been attacked again and everyone should stay inside except for their warriors. Unfortunately Laura was out with the kids. They left to go to the store which was near where the attack was happening. I'll come with you. Isabel grabbed her jacket. No, you stay here. Isabel, sorry Kem, but my niece and nephew with their mother are out there, so no, I won't stay. Kem agrees in the end to take her even though he didn't want to. They both rush outside, Kem shifting into his wolf while Isabel took his car. When they arrived, the place was in massacres. Bodies were lying everywhere and the shop that was near the border was destroyed with warriors still deflected the rogues. Isabel quickly unbuckles her seat belt and rushes out. A wolf who smelled like rogue jumped at her. Too bad this time she was ready to defend herself, and before he could kill her, Isabel kills him by snapping his neck. Then she moved to another rogue. The rogues retreat once again. She looks around and saw the alphas in the council with their beta and doctors identifying the bodies. Cameron on the other side was moving from one body to body hoping to find Laura and his kids. Isabel was too exhausted to stand up. Yet when she stood up to go help him look for Laura and the kids, Victor arrived with Clyde in his arms. She rushes to him, taking him from him. Thank you, she mumbled, holding him tight to her chest. Cameron, who Victor alert with his son like a lightning arrive, was beside Isabel hugging them both. Victor watches with jealousy, yet he knew that they are just a family, nothing more. I found him crying near our border by himself. Laura, did you? Victor nodded his head no to Cameron. I'm sorry Cam, but it was only him we found. Cameron stood up, growling with all his might through the cold chill night, howling for his lost daughter and mate. Carla with Alan came running in their direction once she heard his wolf cry. She stood by him speechless with her eyes on Isabel, who moves to comfort Cameron, telling him that he needs to be strong for Clyde. Victor, watching his mate hurts because of her family, makes him filled with anger towards the rogues and was beyond furious, but he withheld it all for tonight just for his mate. This whole story will ends with me killing you all. Call me a fisco of your desire. The king of the rogues sat behind his desk smirking to himself as he waited for his minions to bring him good news. His fingers brushing his after-shaved beardless chin. The door swung opens and in walk one of his warriors. His eyes lit in delight. What good news you brought now? The warrior didn't speak. The rogue king stood up. Tell me. The warrior looked with fear in his eyes. He was afraid to let him know that they have failed again. Tell me, he growls at him. We lost. The warrior didn't finish his words as the king bit on his neck before tearing the poor man up. Zane, he calls to his beta as he wiped off the blood from his mouth, feeling disgust with the warrior's blood taste. His right-hand man came in and he avoided to look on the ground at the body. Tell me, how we fail this time? Zane without nervous answer him. It was like he was used to his alpha and king to turn out this way. Alpha Victor's beta and brother were there too, along with other masks people I assumed are his best warriors. And Victor, he sneered at him. Still Zane doesn't flinch, he just looks straight at his alpha's eyes. He was the one who outnumbered the hunters and killed our 200 wolves. This made the Alpha King growl louder with furious. Impossible, that still gets on my nerves. Any other possible ways? He growled at Zane again. We could attack the neutral territory from there. We can took over except for Victor's territory. He gritted his teeth. What about the council? The members of the council are too weak to attack as their territory are heavily damaged due to our attack last month. The Alpha King of the Rogues laughed. Good, now that's more like it. He walks towards Zane, stopping an inch away from him. Any update on that mutt Kiev and the girl? He asks. Zane stood there in silence. Did you find out why Victor shows up everywhere as he goes? Did you confirm her as his mate? Alpha, he is friend with her brother-in-law and according to our sources the Alpha kinda have feelings for her, but no, she's not his mate. The alpha held a smug look on his face. Interesting, I didn't take him to be a softie. I made a right move on her, didn't I? He grinned evilly. What about the other? Did she try to escape? Zane nodded his head. No alpha, she didn't. Excellent, now call that mutt Kiev to be here in my office and clean this up. Will do so, alpha. The alpha sat back down to his desk, smiling to himself, his thoughts repeating the words he aimed to achieve after he defeated everyone, especially Victor. Just so you wait, Victor, everything will be revealed and you will beg for your life. After servants coming in and going out, the door opens again and Kiev came inside. Where is the girl I asked you to look after? He asks. She's at my home sleeping. The alpha slams his hand on the desk. You slept with her, his hands pointing at him with accuse. Kiev cower a little bit back. Relax, alpha, we didn't do anything, she just needed a space to stay for the night. The alpha moved too quickly in front of him, his hand around his throat. The last time I gave you a mission you ended up spreading our prey's legs instead of me doing that. Kiev tap on his hand. Alpha, he struggled to breath. Seeing his helpless look, he finally let go. I swear, alpha, I won't touch or seduce her, not this time. He coughed up. Much better, because if you do I'll never let you see another day. The alpha went and sat back behind his desk on his luxury armchair. He get out the money and threw it to him, landing it on the floor everywhere. You do your job right this time. If you ever break the deal I'll make sure to make your death painful. Are we understood? Yes, alpha. Kiev collected the money on the floor before going back to his apartment. Time will heal everything. It's been a month since they never stops looking for Laura and Holly. They haven't found anything on them. Cameron was going insane at the same time. Isabel tries to keep things sane for Clyde, so she quit her job and make sure Cameron and Clyde are both taken care of. He has always been there for her, now it was her time to be there for him. Apart from Kyle and Victor visits, Carla, to much Isabel's surprise, visit them very often, excusing that it was their pack's fault for not really arrived on time. Her brother is also trying his best to deal with the rogues, so she always welcome her in and she has helped her out a lot with the boys. Cora did drop by with Jem to check on her Isabel a week ago, and she was amused to watch them as they would make a hot werewolf couple with their pickering and arguments on how to handle Clyde. Despite all that, Victor never fails to prove her that he deeply regrets and is sorry for what he has done. Like 2 weeks ago, he arrived on their doorstep on his knees telling her that he was sorry for everything that he has ever done, not forgetting he sent flowers with a sorry note attached to it every day. People in the territory began to talk of her and Victor being intimately involved with one another. A lot of rumors popping up between the two of them, but it didn't stop Victor from apologizing to her over and over again. Then a week ago he invited her to a dinner in which Isabel never shows up to even the lunch he has offered to her. She has also dismissed his help on finding Laura and Holly, but only accepts it from Kyle, Carla, and Kiev, who was nothing but a good friend to her. He never stopped coming by their house to check on her. Kiev even took her on a dinner and tries to make her and Clyde happy. After another month, Cameron has finally come out of his misery. He was getting better with Carla moving around their house like it was her home for so long, long before Laura or her sister. Hey Carla, where's Cam? She turned around from the fried pan on the stove. He went up to his room to change. Isabel crosses her arms. It's funny, something is going on with you and him, right? Carla flips the pancake, then put it on the plate when it's cooked. She took a breath. No, I just help him as I have the same situation with him. She pressed her lips together. She slid the plate towards Isabel on the counter. Look, I don't hate you, but just know that he has a mate and a child out there. I hate to see a girl like you getting hurt, even though you're kind to me before with your questions, but all is in the past. Carla only nodded her head. Thank you, Isabel, and I'm sorry again. She lit a smile to Isabel, who in return smiled back at her with reassurance. Cameron came down with Clyde in his arms. We're heading out. He walks to the door, but Isabel stops him. Carla is coming with you. She gestured for her to go with him. Once they were gone, she sat down on the couch to rest as she was too exhausted. She hasn't really have a nice beauty sleep for the past months. So maybe now was the time to get that sleep to get another energy to look for her niece and Laura. Her eyelashes were both heavily drooping, ready to be consumed by darkness, only to be wakened by the ring of her doorbell. She opened it to find Victor outside Isabel. He didn't finish as she shut the door in his face. She knew that being rude to an alpha was disrespectful, but Victor didn't deserve a respect from her. Not now or tomorrow. She was too tired to deal with him, so she went back to sleep in her room, ignoring the banging on their door. You have to make up your mind or you'll all die. Constantly, months after months, there were rogues attack on the border. This include the territories of the alphas in the council. They couldn't control them anymore, therefore, instead of calling Alan, they turned to the one and only person whom could provide security for the neutral territory instead of handing them over to the Rogue King. The council has nothing else to do with it. He was the only who can clear them off. Their only option was Victor Salazar, who have helped months after months keeping the rogues out from the neutral territory run by them. The neutral territory was their central city for everything, and there's a reason why rogues wanted that territory. Once any alpha rule it, they could easily have access to other borders, and attacks could be easy, excluding Victor's pack, as they are well secure and not exposed to any other border opening. They have already called him, and within an hour Victor finally arrive in the council meeting place. They watches him as he saunter to sit on the chair at the far end of the table. He didn't acknowledge anyone there, he just sat there waiting for them to start. He refused to be nice to anyone as they refused to help him back then. We have called you today to ask you here if you could join forces with us. Victor kept on listening as one of the alpha spoke. The rogues will attack again today, and we are here to ask you if you could lend a hand in this matter. Victor lay back on his chair. And we need you, Alpha. We ask you to please put our differences aside and help the poor innocent children and other people there. Victor laughed, knowing that they're using vocabs like innocent and poor, which could make him agree. In fact, he is not a fool, as finally they seek for his help, but that's not all he wants. He wanted the territory too, and he was ready to make them beg for his help. Not so easy, his wolf mock. He nodded his head towards the council to make it seem like it was an easy deal, yet when he spoke the council knew then they have to agree with Alpha Victor's requirements, unless they use Alan as a bait. We could call Alpha Alan for his help, then you should have instead of me. Victor now tapping his finger on the table. Something tells me you couldn't. He smiled with victory. I remember you still don't trust Alan and his pack since they attacked your territory years ago, right? Alpha Cruz. Nobody speaks. I apologize, fellow, but it's either you take it or leave it. I have no problem with the rogues taking over that territory, he lies, and at the same time he wishes the moon goddess has heard him. After all, I'm not the one begging for help. The doors abruptly slams open with two betas came running and whispering something to their alphas, who growls in return. Alpha, those people needs your help. Alpha Aaron tries to convince him, yet he didn't budge to agree. Another warrior came in whispering to another alpha, then to the other. So far the rogues were near to victory, and Victor knew about it. Alpha Victor growl. Alpha Conrad agree, we'll take it. They all nodded. Very well. Victor gestured to Kyle for the papers, who went around the table with it. The council members sign it one by one. Victor then mind-linked Jem, who was already by the borders and in hide to attack now. He turned to the 6 gentlemen. Fellows, clear out your men from my territory. Victor walk out of there before shifting into his wolf and head there. He made it there in the heat of chaos, seeing that all other pack members from the council alphas has now retreat, leaving only his warriors there with the pack members of the neutral territory. He killed the first rogue he got his hands on. The rogue was about to murder a young warrior, probably around his 15th. Thank you, he mutters. Victor moved to his next opponents, clawing, then snaps their heads off. His wolf growl in victory when there were only fewer rogues left. Their leader growls, thundering through the wind, running in speed towards Victor, who just stood there waiting for him patiently. when he was about to reach him he quickly dodged his attack using his werewolf senses and speed. The rogue leader, who was not the alpha rogue as he wasn't really that strong, whimpered under Victor's attack. "You picked the wrong day to attack this territory. My territory." Others stops fighting and the other remaining rogues retreat instantly. He held up the rogue in his bare hand. "Today mark this territory as mine, next time attack another alpha's land, not mine," he smirked, looking straight in the rogue eye before snapping his neck cold-heartedly. Everyone has scurry away. Victor gesture for Kyle to do their official announcements. "Don't forget tonight's our welcoming dinner. Everyone is expected," he mind-linked before walking back to the woods heading for their pack house. "Before you go, was there something I could have said to make your heart beat better?" Louis Capaldi. Everyone was expected to be at dinner tonight. Victor has finally won over the territory he's been dreaming of. He should be overjoyed and party all day, yet there was something missing and he knew it at the time what he was missing. He was missing her so badly. Seeing her smile with Kiev gave him another perspective. He doesn't have to be selfish. He stood by the pack door when he saw her enter from the safe house, with Kyle and a bubbly Cora behind her. The ones in neutral territory has come to his pack for registration or resignation. Victor's eyes were focused on Isabel, who was wearing a simple black jeans with a plain oversized red shirt. Even if she is wearing those simple clothes, Victor find it hard not to run at her. They were getting near to him. Isabel, who slowly falls behind Kyle and Cora, who both went straight in the pack house when they pass him. "Hey," he said hi to her, and Isabel just nod her head and try to walk out again. Victor hands was around her arm. "Can we talk?" he whispers. 4. "Please just hear me out." She stood there thinking, then finally agree in the end. They moved to his office to talk. Isabel sat opposite him while he half sit on the edge of his desk facing her. "I know I've said this a lot of times, but I wanted to say it. I don't care many times you hear it from me." Victor almost didn't finish his sentence as his own tear betrayed him. He got down on his knees, taking her hands into his. "I am really sorry, Isabel, for everything." She didn't speak, she just sat there looking back at him. She was expecting him to say more, but he didn't. There were a lot of things they need to talk about, but Isabel couldn't bring herself to do it, so she pushes away his hands, tears slipping from her eyes. "I don't understand you, Victor." She wiped off her tears and he just stay there on his knees. "That's the only thing I've been hearing from you for this past months. Sorry. I am sick and tired of hearing that from you. Don't just say I haven't tried." Isabel, she shook her head in disappointment. "Have you, Victor? I mean, is that all you have to say? I didn't need to hear you're sorry. What you just have to expect me to do with your sorry when you haven't asked for my forgiveness yet?" She sobbed up. Victor moved to her. "Have you noticed why I never ask for your forgiveness?" She walked past him. "Nope, and I don't care anymore. Save it for your chosen mate and future pup." He grabbed her arm, not too tight to hurt her, "because it's unforgivable and I have no excuse for it. Just so you know, I won't ever ask for a chance again." "Isabel," his voice in a whisper. She felt him try to breathe behind her. He turned her around, gazing in her eyes filled with regrets. "Because I just realized now, after today I finally realized that nothing could change. It won't change anything. It won't change me rejecting you 5 years ago. It won't even change the fact that I lost you completely to someone else, and even if I try, I know you." She felt his pain, and at the same time she felt hurt that he won't even fight for her, for them again like he did months ago anymore. She was going to give him a yes answer if he was going to ask for the chance today. All he needed was a little push, yet here he is letting her go completely. Gathering up all her courage and pushing away any other thoughts, she held his gaze fine and walk away. He stood there feeling numb. Not fighting for her to earn a second chance is cowardice, but when he saw happiness in her when she's with Kiev, who would want to take that away and remind her of the past? He doesn't want to inflict another pain to her. Rejecting her was a mistake not only he made but also other wolves out there. Letting her go meaning he truly loves her even though it kills him slowly, at least it would mend with his decision in the past. Victor stay rooted in his office. Slowly he broke down sobbing over the loss of his mate. He felt his heart rip out of his chest, wishing he could have make things better for her. Victor stay there weeping in his office, beating on his broken heart. He went to see her already in the car with Cameron to go back home, after calming himself and his wolf, who literally blames Victor for losing their mate. "Hey, are you okay?" Jem stood beside him watching his alpha with concerns. His beta knew what his alpha gone through and what he's been trying to do for the past months. "I think you should forget about her, let her go. You, my friend, has already paid for it. You've done enough. If she don't see it then it's her loss," he finally said what has been occupying his mind lately. "Actually I just did." He turns and walk back towards the pack house. When night comes everyone came to dinner, but he has never seen her around. That night she left, he heard one of the warrior from her new pack murmur to his other fellow friend, "Yes, she left with the crazy maniac. I don't know why she chose him out of all the boys out there. I mean, Alpha was interested in her even though they aren't mates," they whisper in low voices, and once they saw him standing near them, he couldn't hear them any longer, as they now mind links instead of conversing out loud. Jem again came and stood in front of his friend. "You wanna go out?" he asks. "Yeah, that would be great." At the same time on the Rogues King territory he was smashing things in his office over their loss. Cringing in disappointment and murderous thought filling his mind once he heard the news of her gone with Kiev. The bastard has betrayed him over again, he growl for Zane who got there immediately. "Find them," he growl. "Alpha Kiev is moving to Aaron's territory while we don't know where she went. She's not with him." The Alpha King was satisfied by this piece of information that suddenly he calms down for a bit, smiling to himself. "Perfect. Now we have to watch until we know for sure. We still mobilize, but as for now we rest until then. Everything has changed, nothing will ever be the same as I've chosen someone over you." 2 years later. She woke up feeling the warmth of the sunlight shine through her window. Looking beside her bed, it was empty, like as if someone has been with her last night. She slowly got off and went straight to the shower, then had to make breakfast for herself. Indeed, surprisingly she found Kiev's back facing her in the kitchen. He must have came in this morning since he also has a key to her apartment. She tips toe and hug him from behind. "Morning," she whispers in the crook of his neck. "Morning, beautiful," he replied. "So you ready for today?" She plays with her finger where the gold ring rested. Last night Kiev has proposed to her and she said yes to him. They've only just got back together 3 months ago. After they both left the pack they went on their separate ways until she met him again. He asked her out and she didn't want to turn him down again, as Kiev been asking her non-stop. Their relationship hasn't reached the last 2 steps, they still kiss, make out, but they never took it further. She always held back and she felt guilty every time she did so, as she could see that he really wants to do it, but she just wanted to wait. Don't know why, maybe because her mate's words still engrave in her heart. Also last night she has a nightmare where she saw Victor dies in front of her eyes. Kiev, who was to go home, heard her scream from down the hall, rushes back in the apartment to comfort her. She never told him about it and she refuses to let him stay overnight. They may be just engaged, but there are still boundaries that needs to be kept. "Are you sure you're ready to go back?" She nodded her head. "Yup, I'm so ready." He pecks her lips, then settled down to have her breakfast. Before she met Kiev again she has made a promise to herself that she would go back to her pack and make amends with Victor, whom she hold grudges to. Kiev wasn't and was never in her plan. He was unexpected, but she was glad he came around, as he has helped her out, being the person that tries to fill the broken shards. They clean up everything after breakfast and went to catch their flight back to her old pack. "It's good to be back," she sighed while squeezing Kiev's hand. "Come now, we have to go." She got out of the car and dragged Kiev along with her. She knocks on the door. There was no answer. She knocks again. This time someone opens it. There stood a woman wearing a summer dress with an apron as if she was cooking. Judy, who is it? She knew that voice. It was her brother-in-law Cameron. He froze once he sees hers before running and hug her, spinning her around. "Oh my, where have you been?" he asked before he growled at Kiev, taking a protective stance in front of her, his hand on her wrist now. "Oh, where are my manners, right? Remember him?" She pointed to Kiev. "He was my boyfriend, now my fiancé." She excitedly shows them the ring. She saw Cameron's look harden, then he extends out his hand. "Nice to see you again." He didn't seem to look pleased, which she wanted to confront him, but she is just exhausted. "Hi there," she waves at the lady. "Oh right, this is Judy, Clyde's babysitter." She slightly smiled at her. "Now where's my nephew?" Cameron took her by the arm. Kiev follow behind them with Judy. "There he is, all grown up." She rushes, picking him up, then spin him around. "Gosh, can't believe you're all grown up." If only she started to tear up when she thought of Holly and Laura. They still haven't found their body or know whether they are alive or not. Cameron, seeing her like that, came and hugged her. "Shh, everything will be okay, we have to let them live in peace." Isabel, she nodded her head, wiping off her tear, then set him down again to play with his toy. She went and sat on the couch opposite Cameron. Kiev sat near her on the same couch. "What was I missing?" she asks as her eyes move between Judy and him. "Quite a lot, but I think you need to rest first. Are you staying with him?" Cameron motioned at Kiev. "Oh no, I will be staying with you guys if that's okay with you." "Nonsense, of course you are." They talk for a while before Kiev left to go, then followed by Judy. Then she head up to her old room to rest. When she woke up again, it was dark outside, so she shower first before heading down. Clyde has already sleep, leaving her and Cameron alone. After 2 years it felt so empty without the presence of Holly and Laura. Cameron stood by the counter with food already being served. She took a seat, then started to devour her dinner as she was so hungry. Latterly, when they were done and clean up the kitchen, Kim finally decided to talk to her in the living room. "Are you sure about this?" Cameron asked her. "You know he's not Victor, your mate." "Yes, Cameron, I am 100% sure." He sighs heavily. "It feels like you're making the same mistake again." She shook her head in denial, even though she knew deep down inside her she still wishes it was Victor instead of him, and she will regret this. "No, I won't." "Yes, you will, Isabel, and guess what? He's also going to marry the Luna of the Crescent, Alan's sister." Tears started to well up in her eyes. "Then why do you still want me to be with him when clearly he is going to mate someone because he is forced into? If he doesn't, then the rogues will invade his territories, as right now they're getting weak in their defense. You have no idea what has been going on throughout the past 2 years." "Too late," she thought. "I just can't." Cameron took her in his arms when she saw her tears. "Just give it a thought, please, Isabel," and all she could do was nodded her head. "Oh, by the way, the Victor you used to know no longer the Victor we know," Cameron says when he was to go up to his room. Isabel instantly felt guilty and shame filling her, remembering a year ago Cora and Victor's older sister Zoe came to look for her. It was the first time she met her, a very elegant woman. Their encounter was refreshing, yet the ending was disappointing simply because when Zoe keeps begging her to come back for him, Isabel immediately rejected her pleading. Twirling the golden ring on her finger, she smiled at Cameron. "Oh yeah. Watching you was tortuous, but I think I can live with that." Kiev came and took her the next day. He told her that his Aunt Evelyn, who lives in the Crescent Pack, wants to meet her at the cafe she used to work at. They were kind of quarrel in the morning when he came to pick her up, as she didn't know he has an aunt and she wasn't prepared to meet her. They never talked to each other on their way until they arrived at the cafe, where at the corner sat Ms. Cringe, the type who was more than ready to murder her with their words and opinions. When she saw them both, she has a big grin on her face, her hands going around Kiev, hugging him. Yet that smile was for Kiev alone, as when her eyes met hers she frowned, pulling away from him, then sat back down on the chair. She nervously smiled, sitting down next to Kiev opposite her. "Aunt Eve, I would like you to meet my fiancée Isabel. She took a sip of her black coffee. And when do you two intend to marry? Well, we haven't thought of the date yet as we're still just young and gosh, she obviously cut her off. Are you kidding me? She rolled her eyes at the two of them. Who in their right mind in our race would propose and expected to be married after 3 years? Isabel was to say something, but again Evelyn stops her before she could say anything else. Did you have a mate? Yes, I did. She took a sip again of her coffee. Poor soul, is he an alpha? No, she lies. Turning beside her, she saw Kiev tighten his hold and she knew that he didn't like her answer. Evelyn's phone rang. She answered it before putting it down and ready to be gone somewhere. Schedule your wedding from 4 weeks now. Evelyn took her by surprise. I'm sorry, but no, but dear, 4 weeks from now on. Go on, prepare everything. Time is ticking, children, and she left them there. What was that? Kiev whisper yell at her, which makes her wolf growl a little more, felt threatened by his tone at him. Isabel's wolf never resurfaced since she accepted Kiev as her boyfriend. Hani, her wolf, totally shut her off, but surprisingly she just react just because Kiev seems to be a threat. Look, I'm sorry, but you know Eve is just my only family and you seems to disrespect her, which hurt me the most. He took her hands into his, making her wolf shut her out again. I didn't disrespect her. Did you really have to listen to what your aunt is saying? Are you saying you don't want to marry me? No, but 4 weeks? Are you kidding me? How am I supposed to plan it within 4 weeks? She sighed with frustration. He beams at her. We could start now. Come on, what's the use of your man here? He banged on his chest, taking her hand and drag her out of the cafe. They went around looking for a venue first. She was looking into something more affordable and simple, yet Kiev was going for the big shot. She knew her saving and his salary wouldn't made up to it, but Kiev insisted on for them to have an expensive wedding, saying he'll pay for it. She thought for a minute where he would get the money from. Then, Isabel, would you wait here? I have somewhere to go to. Yet I could take a look around. He kissed her on the cheek, then left to go wherever he's going. She walked around the town for a while, couldn't even remember most of the things here. A lot of things changes around since Victor took it over. Not in a bad way, but impressively he turned it more into a fairytale place. Suddenly she remembered that she could have been a rogue if she wasn't part of a rogue, which seems strange to her. Betas and guards should drag her back to the main Crimson Pact territory for questioning, but nothing happens. She came across a shop with classy windows. It has a sign of Lisa's Fashion and Jewelry. She watches from the outside through the big glass window as the ladies inside rushes from here to there while the other one was fixing the bride-to-be's dress. She tries to imagine herself doing that only if she has the money to buy a beautiful wedding dress, yet since she can't afford it for the meantime she would settle for a simple one. The bride-to-be stretches her arms, turning from side to side while the ladies gasp in awe. Slowly she twirled around and turned facing her direction. The bride was beautiful indeed, but her mind and wolf was telling her she's not, as the bride-to-be was the one who was going to marry Victor, her mate. She tries to take small breathing in, but once the groom-to-be appear beside the bride, her world stops. She shouldn't felt this way, yet her feelings was betraying her and her love for Kiev. She wishes the moon goddess would have created their world so big like the humans God create theirs. As if he knew her presence, his eyes met hers from inside to outside, even though he was kind of far inside. There you are, Kiev's voice interrupts her. She quickly walked to him, taking his attention away from the shop and walk away. She spends the whole day with him, going around to organize things for their wedding and him taking her on dinner before dropping her off at the house. She kick off her shoes and walk inside the living room, only to be met with the husband and wife-to-be along with Cameron. Hi, Victor greeted her, and she felt her insides slowly burning into flame from his voice. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.